The 2JZ is one of the most legendary engines ever built.
It's famous for bulletproof reliability and handling huge amounts of boost.
But what does one look like after 250,000 miles?
This 2JZ came out of a Lexus GS300 with nearly 250,000 miles, and it cost me nothing. This engine was removed from the car for a video at my old job and was going to be thrown away. Now I couldn't live with that, so I saved it for this very day.
But what makes these engines so famous? Toyota introduced the 2JZ in the early 90s in both turbo and non-turbo forms, which there are big differences between. It eventually made it into the Mark IV Supra in 1993, where it blew up in popularity, partly thanks to its famous use in the Fast and the Furious. Since then, it has been swapped into everything from Volvos to Lamborghinis. It's got a cast iron block and massive tuning potential. People have been pushing these engines past 1,000 horsepower for years.
But there are a few major reasons why this 2JZ might not be able to handle huge power.
So today we're going to tear this entire engine down to assess its condition after 250,000 miles and figure out exactly what it'll take to unlock its full potential for massive power.
And we got started by removing the intake manifold. There we go. First major part off of the engine. This is our intake manifold, well, half of it, but this has everything in it. It has our injectors, has some of our wiring harness, but this is one of the things that you have to get rid of if you want to go for big power on a 2JZ. These are very restrictive. I think people only run about 350 to 400 horsepower on that. If we wanted to go for a lot more, we'd need a big intake manifold. So this, probably not going to get used if we use this engine.
With the first power restriction out of the way, I pulled the spark plugs to check their condition and see how they'd held up. Some of them are a little bit oily, but they don't look too bad. If it's very black, it'd be very rich. If it was all white, it'd be very lean. But these, they look, how I'd say, just right. There is some goop. I mean, that might just be from it sitting outside. It's on top of the plug, basically. So one of the seals might be buggered on the coil packs and crap is just getting through it. But other than that, they don't look bad and they're all matching. Now, there is a little bit of a mess down here because lots of the wiring, all the sort of like weatherproofing, weather cover stuff is all just broken away and is now in there. But other than that, it doesn't actually look too bad. You said this engine's been outside?
This car was parked outside for upwards of a year. A rat then decided to take refuge inside of the 2JZ. It's not led the best life and it's had a lot of miles. If this engine, of all engines, is good, kind of proves that 2J is built different. With everything looking okay so far, I moved on to disassembling the belt system to get a closer look at the next layer of components. I've got everything pulled apart here. I next need to take the crank pulley off. Now, this is connected to the front of your crankshaft. It's in front of your timing belt. Your timing belt is kind of behind it, but this is what spins all of your other things. Your water pump, your alternator that goes here, your power steering here. We need to take this off. We need to pull this bolt out first, which is done up with the power of 1,000 suns. There we go, there's him off. These are notoriously hard to get off. In theory, they should just slip on and off, but they don't. We're gonna get a pulley puller and get this off. Then this timing cover is off and we're basically stripped down fully to the bare block. There we go. There is our harmonic balancer. We've now got that off, which means we can now pull the final timing cover off, which, as you can see, has been contacting here a little bit on the engine block. We've got some nice melted cheese here. Take this bottom cover off, and then we have access to basically everything.
With the timing belt system exposed, it was time to perform the first test and get a real sense of how healthy the 2J was. This is a compression tester.
All this basically tests is you turn your engine over, it's going to measure the amount of pressure going on within your cylinders. The reason that you do that is that if you have cylinder scoring or there is a problem inside your cylinder, your compression will be lower in that cylinder than the rest of them. So what we're looking for is not necessarily the highest number, but that all of the numbers across the 6 are relatively similar. You'd usually do this by turning the car over.
We don't have a car or key or anything.
So what we're about to do is run this engine like this. We've hooked up some apparatus and we're going to jump start the starter motor and it will turn that engine over. It will build up a number up to here. Around about 180 to 190 is kind of standard.
This would be a big cold start.
Big cold start.
Now, the 2J we're currently tearing down comes from a car that is currently marked as scrap. So legally, you are not allowed to buy that car. But what if someone did try to sell you that car? Now, with today's sponsor, Car Vertical, you can find out that dodgy history.
Now, every single day, hundreds of cars might get crashed or written off as scrap, but some people might try and repair them and put them back on the road in an attempt to hide their dodgy past and make some money. But with a Car Vertical check, you can find out that weird history.
All you need for a Car Vertical report is a number plate, but if you don't have access to the number plate, you can use the VIN as well. And a Car vertical report will tell you if that car has been crashed, stolen or clocked.
Now take for instance the Lexus from which our 2J comes out of. It comes up with a yellow warning for financial and legal status. It tells us that this vehicle was marked as scrapped at the beginning of 2024. If it comes up for sale, looking all nice, you know to avoid that car.
Here we have another Japanese 6-cylinder car that also has a dodgy history because we've got 2 yellow marks. Now this car was written off category S, that is structural damage, and then later on it was then scrapped. Someone may try and take the VIN number from this car and sell it in a different country on a stolen car and pass it off as perfectly fine. But with a car vertical report and the VIN, you can find out this shady past.
So if you're ever buying a car, van or motorbike, make sure that you run a car vertical check to make sure that the price you pay for it matches its history.
And as an added bonus, Car Vertical are offering you guys 20% off when you use our code TDC.
Right, so I'm going to turn the engine over maybe 10 to 15 times.
Yep. Just over 200, I'd say that's like 210.
Nice. 210's nice, yeah.
First cylinder looking healthy, we moved on to the rest, hoping that they were holding similar pressure.
Pretty even across the board. We have one that's a little bit higher on number 3, and then number 4 is a good bit lower. The difference between these two numbers is 10.9%. Not ideal, but not the worst thing in the world. I think most people go around 10 to 15% max, and for an engine with 250,000 miles, remember that, it's been to the moon and it's only got 10% variation. That's pretty good. Could be the rings that are doing that are kind of letting oil past, or it could be in the head. There might be a valve that's coked up with carbon. So the next step, drain the oil, and then we're going to tear this engine down and see if we can see if there's anything that points towards this, or if it's just a good 2JZ.
So we drain the oil to check for any metal fragments that could have come from worn components over time, potentially causing damage to the rest of the engine.
Oh, there's not much in it. Really not much in it. Must have been when I was transporting it, must have come out.
He also looks pretty fresh. That's not black. I'm pretty happy with that. Time to tear the rest of it down and see if we can find any other issues. But right now, how? This just looks like a 50k mile engine.
Yeah, exactly.
How's this possible?
At this point, everything was looking promising, so we dove into the full teardown, starting by removing the rocker cover, which revealed some very healthy looking camshafts.
For 250,000 miles, it's amazing. To be clear, we aren't experts. We're idiots tearing down an engine, but even we can see from this. Look at the colour of in here. It's just nice. Now, half of it is also going to be that the previous owners to us took care of it. We got lucky, but now we're ready to take the cams out and pull the whole head off. These are another thing that stops this engine making power.
These are the camshafts. They spin in time with the crankshaft to open and close the valves, but they're optimized for daily driving. So once you get to around the 600 horsepower mark, both the non-turbo and the turbo 2JZ cams run out of efficiency. So if we wanted to make more than that, we need to upgrade them to some aftermarket cams like these, which would allow the top of the engine to push all the way up to the 1000 horsepower mark.
Perhaps these don't go back in.
We don't need those.
With the old restrictive cams out of the way, it was time to take the head off.
It's now time to take the head bolts off. For me, always the scariest part, but we must take them off in a certain order. You basically keep going back and forth and crisscrossing so that you relieve the tension gently. Otherwise, if you all do it one side, you kind of put pressure on one side of the head. Well, if you just like to undo it, mate.
Jesus wept!
If you could just undo it. If you just like to... Nice. It's time to open this engine up. But there's a good chance this has never been done because we looked at one of the head bolts and they doesn't look aftermarket. Let's go put them up on the desk and we'll have a look after.
Well. So previously, when we did this on your engine, that was one of our biggest issues. And as you can see on this one,
Just nothing.
this is a head gasket, and it's another big reason why this 2JZ is much weaker than its turbo brother. Our non-turbo 2J has a tiny 0.3mm head gasket, reducing cylinder space and increasing compression. This isn't an issue until you throw a turbo on. Boosted air raises heat in that tiny space, risking premature detonation and engine damage. The turbo engine has a gasket 4 times thicker to lower compression and improve reliability. Upgrading to a thicker head gasket would be the first crucial step in making any more power in our 2J.
That appears to me to be a original head gasket.
That's probably as old, if not maybe older than me, and that is looking much better right now.
And then looking at the actual block itself, top of the pistons, you can see they're black. Usually they would start out life silver or like a bronze colour. That's just carbon build-up.
Number 4, that was the one that we had the kind of issues with. It doesn't appear to have any more scoring than any of the other ones. And the other thing is you can see the cross-hatching, which is an indicator at least that this engine is still pretty healthy. The pistons, you can push those a good amount of power.
The pistons in our non-turbo 2J are weaker, but can hold around the 400 to 450 horsepower mark, whereas the turbo pistons are good for around 600 horsepower. People have pushed them far higher, but at those power levels, it starts to become a matter of time before a failure occurs. Because of that, people will upgrade to forged pistons, which are stronger and more heat resistant, allowing you to push well into the 4-digit power figures.
With everything still looking solid, we took a closer look at the head where things were ever so slightly less positive.
Number 3, 4 and 6 have this kind of lighter look to them, which kind of points towards it running lean. Your engine has an air-fuel mixture. When it's running rich, it will get much darker. And when it's running lean, which is much more hot and really not good for your engine, they tend to go a little bit more white. Now, these don't look terrible, but they look different to the first two, for instance. What it could be is that some of the injectors, which look original after 250,000 miles, might have started to gonna die a bit, or their pattern wasn't as efficient. So these ones were running a bit more lean. If you are an expert 2J builder, please do let us know in the comments what this might point towards. But as far as we can see, it's not the worst thing in the world.
This head is another key reason why this particular 2J can't handle mega power just yet.
The head of our engine and the head of the Turbo 2JZ are in fact very different. We have smaller inlet ports than the huge ports on the Turbo head, but in fact, that's not an issue. I spoke with Master 2JZ builders SRD Tuning, and they told us that our non-turbo head actually has a better flow on the exhaust side than the turbo head, and that they have successfully tested a non-turbo head just like ours to 1,100 horsepower with just the set of camshafts and upgraded springs.
Right, I think we're happy with the head, but now onto the final piece. We need to spin this guy around, get the sump off, and get into the real oily bits.
So there's our first look inside the actual engine. He doesn't look as gunky as I thought he might for as many miles.
We think it might have come off before because there's lots of not very Toyota-like excess sealant.
I'm threading off the nut for the bottom of the pickup. If this goes through my fingers, this is inside of a rod or a piston. I'm shaking.
There we go.
Lovely.
Ah!
Do not drop that in there. This is a good reason why you should be careful when putting on sumps, because look, that goes inside here. Look, that's just a chunk of gasket. All it takes is that to go into your oil pickup and block it. Bad times for you.
Meanwhile, the 2JZ, I think I'll be fine.
I think I'll be good for another 250,000 miles.
After removing the lower oil pan, we took off the upper section, exposing the 2JZ's impressive inner workings.
And now, the full glory of the 2JZ.
After draining the final bit of oil, it was time to strip down the bottom end of this legendary engine and see what condition the really important bits were in.
Oil pan off, you can now see the entirety of the rods and pistons as they are. Maybe someone more advanced might notice things that we can't notice, but as far as the engines I've built, this somehow looks cleaner than all of them.
I don't think anyone would be able to tell if it was half the mileage.
And we know for a fact that this was the original engine in that car. This hasn't been swapped, the numbers are matching on the V5. It is impressive.
It was time for the moment of truth, removing the pistons. The first step was to check the condition of the all-important rod bearings, which would give us a good indication of how well this car had been cared for over the years.
If you're into BMWs, you'll know quite well what rod bearings are.
But if you don't, rod bearings are essentially two curved metal plates that sit between the crankshaft and between the rod and the rod cap. They need constant lubrication as the crankshaft spins at incredibly high speeds. If the engine isn't properly warmed up before being pushed hard, or if the oil quality is poor or too thin, these bearings can wear down over time, eventually failing and causing catastrophic engine damage.
And they're a good way of working out how an engine's been treated. If a rod bearing has lots of metal showing, they might not have warmed it up and beat the piss out of it. At 250,000 miles, you'll expect somewhere, I have a feeling that they will surprisingly be somehow still quite intact. Here we go, moment of truth. That's just a brand new bearing. It's been to the moon and it looks like it's just come out of the factory. The crank, he's looking fine, nothing to see on here. And now what we can do, if I push the rod and piston out,
There we
That is Williams' head into a 2JZ.
Interestingly, there is a bit of a score on that.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
BMW people wondering how there isn't 3 tiny quarts of a bearing left.
But after 240 odd thousand miles,
Tis but a scratch.
tis but a scratch.
So with that, we removed the rest of the rods, pistons and bearings, and we were pretty impressed with what we found.
Every single bearing that is in here is basically perfect. There was the one that had the little score from where the oil feed was. That's it. If you look at the crankshaft over here as well, it's all perfect. Nothing looks wrong, at least to our eyes.
Now the bores,
A couple of them got this mark on the inside of the block. There's a little bit that you can feel with your finger, so perhaps that might cause a little bit of blow-by, but we're pretty happy with our compression numbers. Remember, they're relative to each other, and within 10 to 15% is what we have. So I think we're pretty happy to put this engine together.
but we still haven't got to the main reason why. Not all of these engines can just make 1,000 horsepower. It doesn't work like that.
Hold on, they don't come from the factory with 1,000 horsepower?
No, you have to just turn something on and then they just make it.
What?
Contrary to popular belief, they don't all do that. But the reason is over there.
As we explained earlier, this is a later VVTi non-turbo engine. And would you like to guess which is the worst one for making power?
Is it this one?
It's this one.
It's this one.
So, the later VVTi engines that didn't have the turbo have these tiny little rods that are prone to breaking when you send them to over 350 to 400 horsepower. Before lots of you comment, it's actually torque that kills engines, not power. People like to use horsepower numbers. It's a bit easier. These guys aren't rated to 1,000 horsepower, but there's something quite cool. We could put in a set of used GTE turbo rods for £100 or so, if we can find them. Whack a big old Chinese turbo on that guy and send him to the moon.
The GTE turbo rods have been known to handle over 800 horsepower. However, SRD told us that they don't like to run them at more than 700 horsepower these days, because any turbo rods you find now can, in some cases, be 25 years old and have been exposed to thousands of heat cycles. The smart thing to do, of course, is to get forged rods, which will allow you to safely send your 2J to the big 4-digit horsepower number with a good bit more safety.
So this right here is the reason why that engine will not make 1,000 horsepower yet.
Now, there's another conundrum here. We haven't got a car to put this in. So if you have an idea what we should do with this engine or what car we should put this in, let us know. And if you've enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe. And if you want to see another engine teardown video where we tore apart Edwin's straight six from a BMW, you can watch that here. And we'll see you next week.